everybody, I'm Ryan, and today we're going to talk about the vintage metagame over the course of the past week. And as with all my metagames, technically this is a winner's metagame because Magic Online only posts top 32s of challenges, but it's still reflective of the overall metagame. Let's jump into it. So first off, at the top is Lurrus Paradoxical Outcome at over 20%, which is pretty massive, especially since over the last banning restricted, they said they were going to start looking at Lurrus for a banning, which is really rare in vintage, frankly. But Lurrus Paradoxical Outcome at 20%. In second is Dredge with 11.2%. In third is Mono White Initiative with 9.9%. In fourth is Jewel Shops at 7.5%. And then in fifth is Esper Lurrus Control at 6.8%. If you'd like to look at this a little bit longer, please pause the video, feel free, but we're going to jump right into it with Esper Lurrus Control.
This is Petunia, also known as Lurrus, the demon of vintage.
The Esper Lurrus Control deck, I've never liked calling this control. I think it's more of a tempo deck. It plays a lot of the restricted cards in order to just kind of have value, counters what their opponent is doing with Force of Will, Force of Negation, Spell Pierce, all of that stuff, and then plays incredibly valuable creatures like Orcish Bowmasters, which is just nuts in this format, and Psychic Frog, and then sort of protects those creatures while they themselves generate value for the deck. As a couple other alternate win conditions, but that's the meat and potatoes of it, is generate a bunch of mana with our Moxes, play Orcish Bowmaster, Psychic Frog, and protect them and stop what your opponent's doing.
Oh, what's this? More jewels? You gotta stop with that online shopping.
Jewel Shops has been around forever and is coming back at the top now that Raker Shops is sort of slowing down. Basically what this deck is doing is using all of these make more mana if you cast Artifact Lands and Artifact Mana Rocks to cast Coveted Jewel super early, which when it enters, you draw 3 cards and it taps for mana. And so eventually you generate a ton of mana, cast Paradoxical Outcome to return all these things to your hand, draw a bunch more cards to be able to cast a bunch more Moxes, draw a bunch more cards because you're also casting Coveted Jewels, etc, to generate a ridiculous amount of mana, to generate a ridiculous amount of cards, to eventually Manifold Key Time Vault your opponent, or lock them out of the game and destroy all their permanents with Karn. It's fun, it's awesome, it's cool.
Get it? I'm white.
And third is Mono White Initiative. Mono White Initiatives uses the Moxes and also fast lands like Ancient Tomb and whatnot to be able to cast overcosted white creatures, but undercosted for what they're doing. Things like Seasoned Dungeoneer and White Plume Adventurer are able to have you take the initiative, which if you keep the initiative, it just generates an amount of value without having to put anything into it. And then on top of that, the rest of the deck is just some hate bears, like things that stop your opponent from doing what they want to do, like Archon of Emeria, Anointed Peacekeeper, Clarion Conqueror, which is a new card in the deck, which is really exciting. It's all just so good.
Shovel. Stop back again. We gotta dredge them up.
Dredge has become the premier Bazaar of Baghdad deck. What this deck is attempting to do is using Serum Powder to mulligan all the way to Bazaar of Baghdad, and they have to start with Bazaar of Baghdad in their deck. And then they play Bazaar of Baghdad to draw 2 cards, discard 3, they discard some dredgers, and then the next time they activate Bazaar of Baghdad, they're able to use the draws from Bazaar of Baghdad and for their turn to put the dredgers back in their hand and mill a bunch of cards, allowing them to put Narcomoeba on the battlefield, which allows them to put Prize Amalgam on the battlefield, which triggers Creeping Chill, which allows them to bring back Icarid. And it just, like, for 0 mana, allows you to apply a ridiculous amount of pressure. Naturally, as well, Bazaar Baghdad allows you to cast Hollow One for free. And throughout all of this, you can protect what you're doing and stop what your opponent is doing with Grief, with Force of Will, and Force of Negation. The deck is excellent.
Anybody ever wonder if their cats are aliens? I do. They're quite paradoxical. Much like Lurrus. What are you doing? Yeah, she's in her own world.
This deck is sort of like that Lurrus, like, quote-unquote control deck that we talked about before. It plays the Moxes. It does its best to, like, play a bunch of things that generate a ridiculous amount of value. However, it's more focused on casting paradoxical outcomes similar to the Jewel Shops deck, and digging to that with Thundertrap Trainer and with Stock Up and things like that. So again, they can cast paradoxical outcome, return all the Moxes, play all the Moxes, generate a bunch more mana, return all the mana rocks, play them, generate even more mana, etc., until you can time vault your opponent out, or just use the crazy mana advantage and card advantage to kill your opponent, especially with 4th Aeolingas, which is dope. But that is the vintage metagame over the course of the last week. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.